I wrote 100 bass lines for this one song, and while most of them were terrible, I learned a lot in the process. And by further looking at some of the biggest artists in the world, I learned even more. So, what I'm going to do now in this video is show you what I learned so you can use them in your bass lines. One of the most obvious techniques we can utilize in our bass lines is that of a passing note. I am moving between A major and F sharp minor here, and I absolutely could just play the root note of the A chord and the root note of the F sharp minor chord, but I could utilize this G sharp note in the middle. I could go A, G sharp, and then land on my F sharp minor chord, and that is certainly going to add a certain amount of movement and a bit more interest into the bass line. The passing note we just used in our previous example was a diatonic passing note. That G sharp note belongs in the key of A major, but we can also use something called a chromatic passing note, where we use notes from outside of our key. For an example of a chromatic passing note, we're going to have a look at the bass line for the Muse song Compliance. We are in the key of D minor here, and Matt Bellamy is going from a G note to an A note at this point in the bass line, and he uses a chromatic note to pass between the two. A chromatic passing note is this G sharp A flat note here, which does not belong in our key of D minor. We can expand on that previous idea of a chromatic passing note to give us yet another tool for writing bass notes, that being chromaticism. Rather than just a very brief flash of a single chromatic note, we can use multiple chromatic notes and for a longer duration. And for an example of this, we're going to look at yet another Muse bass line, this time from the song Thought Contagion. Chromaticism in the form of chromatic runs is used extensively throughout this bass line. We have a chord progression of 1, 6, 3, 5 in the key of A minor here, and we move between the chords via the use of chromatic runs, sometimes entirely chromatic, other times mostly chromatic. There is so much chromaticism here in this bass line and song that by the end of the 4-bar intro, we've used 11 out of 12 notes that are available to us as musicians, and 10 of those 11 are used in the bass line. Another thing I noticed when looking into the bass lines of some of my favourite artists is that they don't stay the same throughout the entirety of the song. They change, they adapt. Now, I'm not talking about different sections of the song, such as the verse or the chorus. Of course, they're going to differ. We expect them to. They're probably playing a different chord progression for a start. No, I'm talking about variation of the same bass line. No matter how good your bass line is, once the listener has heard it say 8 or 10 times, they may very well be getting bored of it. And this is where variation can come in. We can just tweak or adapt our existing bass line, inject a bit of originality into it, and then we can end up with this wonderful combination of the familiar and the novel. For example, let's have a look at this Arctic Monkeys bass line. It's a great bass line, but it's one we've heard a lot in this original form by the time we get halfway through the second verse. So it's at this point that Nick O'Malley gives us a variation. He changes things up. And what he does is he copies the rhythm and the pitch of the vocal line. Let's take a quick listen to that. And that brings us on nicely to the next technique I want to talk about. Doubling the vocal line or the main melody line, maybe the guitar riff line. This is a pretty interesting idea, and it's not one that I see quite as often as the other techniques listed in this video. But if we do it even just for a small amount of time and then go back to a more traditional bass line, I think it sounds really good. It's happening soon, it's happening soon. And here's the same idea, but instead of doubling the vocals, we're doubling the guitar riff. We could also write a bass line using syncopation. Syncopation is where we play on and accent the weaker beats in the music, thus disturbing the regular flow of the rhythm, and this gives us an unexpected or irregular rhythmic feeling. Here is a regular unsyncopated rhythm. That was in 4/4, meaning we have 4 beats in our bar and each beat is a crotchet or quarter note. These crotchets are our strong beats, where the listener expects the music to land. But our bar of music can be subdivided into much more than just crotchets. It can go into quavers or eighth notes, and again to semiquavers or 16th notes. And if we start playing on and accenting some of those subdivisions, we're going to get a syncopated rhythm, like this. In that syncopated rhythm, the notes are landing on the second quaver or eighth note of each bar. These are weak beats, and this is giving us a syncopated rhythm. Now let's listen to a much more musical and real-world example of this. Here's Supremacy by Muse. Now let's play it without the syncopation, where the music lands on the strong and expected beats. After comparing the two, I think we can really hear how much of the interest of that riff comes from this syncopated rhythm. And one last thing that I discovered when trying to write 100 bass lines is that the bass guitar is a harmonic instrument. Now, I know that sounds obvious. It has multiple strings, much like a regular guitar, and they're actually tuned the same way when they're both in standard tuning. However, we don't really think of the bass guitar as a harmonic instrument, as a chord-playing instrument, but it can play chords. Let's have a quick listen to this by Metallica. There we find Cliff Burton strumming the bass, that E minor power chord, almost as if it was a guitar. Knowing that we can write chords, multiple notes at once, gives us so many more options as composers when we're writing bass lines. Okay, now for today's song. This is song 18 out of 100, and it's called Better Than Yours. My midlife crisis will be better than yours. If I had a job, I would quit. A life I would split, but I don't have either, of course. They'll say it's just a phase. I guess it might be. So I'll buy a motorbike, join that circus I like, and try my luck with the bitty lady. And there's more behind than front. What was that one about the prodigal son? It's only now becoming clear what I should have done. I never increase in need for how I am should. And the memories that I need are getting harder to read, but it seems I'm left with the ones that still hurt. I still recall being with you, sat in a plastic chair. I was sat burning in the sun, drinking beers, having fun, and that song still takes me back there. And there's more behind than front. What was that one about the prodigal son? It's only now becoming clear what I should have done. Well, there we have it. Song 18 out of 100 done. And what did I learn from this song? Well, obviously lots about bass and bass lines, particularly these techniques we've discussed today. passing notes, chromatic passing notes, chromaticism, variation, the fact that we can play a chord on our bass guitar. And yet I have barely scratched the surface with what this amazing instrument can do. For example, I haven't mentioned slap bass, which is something I'm going to learn in the very near future. So I have yet another songwriting tool in my songwriting toolbox. Nor did I mention bass ostinato or bass pedal points, which is something that you absolutely can use in your bass lines and your songs. In fact, if you would like to know more about pedal points, you may want to click on this video somewhere around here. Other than that, I hope you enjoyed today's video and I hope you got something out of it. If you did, please like and subscribe, and please join me in the next video and the next song.